Good afternoon. Welcome to a weather forecast for the entire nation. We're going to be going everything that is going to be happening in the United States over the next couple of days in this forecast. Main thing that I've got my eye on for this week is going to be the chances for a couple of snow shots up here in the Northeast and the Ohio Valley. Keeping an eye on that. We're going to be going over that in detail today. Also watching out for some severe weather potentially and some thunderstorms down here in the Southeast. Watching out for a warm up over here in this region that will kind of track off to the north and east eventually into the Ohio Valley before our snowfall event, during and after which we are expecting some cooler air to come in. So just how cold that air is going to be, just how much snow we're going to be getting, and what kind of severe weather is going to be possible down here, what we're going to be going over in this forecast. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Here's our current radar across the United States, and as you can see, things have calmed down quite a bit. We don't really have as many winter storm warnings as we used to over here in the Northeast. Still some rain over there in the Ohio Valley, mainly into Indiana. That's going to eventually kind of scoot over to the east here into Ohio. Some light rain, nothing too crazy. Over here in the Northeast, a little bit of rain for today, especially over here in Maine. A couple spotty showers over here in New York. A little bit of snow up here in the mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire. Coming down to the Southeast, really not expecting much rain today. Just kind of looking pretty dry out there. Expect some sunnier skies for most of these areas. Southern Plains, the same thing. Not really seeing too much chances for rain. Over here in the West Coast, though, we still have some spotty bits of rain. We've had a lot of snow up in these mountainous regions in the Sierra Mountains. Decent amount of rain over here near Sacramento, San Francisco, over there near Eureka and Redding. Had a lot of reports of some flooding and some mudslides. And up here in the Pacific Northwest, we still have some decent amounts of rain falling over here near the West Coast, and then also going into Idaho in the northern Idaho. But overall, no major stories that are happening right now. It's pretty calm across the United States. That could change a little bit as we go into the future. Nothing's really screaming at me as like a high impact event by any means, but there are some things on the models that we need to monitor. So let's kind of come over to that and look into the future next. This is the GFS model, and this is the entirety of the United States. First, we're going to go over the eastern part, and then we'll go back over to the western part. So continuing throughout the day over here in the Northeast, we're still going to see some spotty areas of snow up there in Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire. It's mainly going to be rain over here in New York. Might get some transitions as we go into the nighttime into snow in some of the higher elevations, but most folks near the surface will probably experience more of a cold rain event. We're expecting this low pressure system that's been kind of plaguing this area for a while to now eventually move out of the United States at around the 24th. And then we're going to be watching for another piece of energy over here. We call these things kind of like clipper systems. There's going to be more warm air moving into the United States. So there's not going to be a whole lot of cold air set up for this. So we're not really expecting too much snow, but starting on the 24th at around 6 p.m., going through the 25th overnight into the early morning hours, then maybe also into the evening, we're going to be expecting some snowfall accumulations over here in this region. Highest amounts most likely will happen here with maybe just a little bit of snow through some dusting over in this region. At least for now, things could change, but you know, that's kind of what we're looking at. Further down to the south, we're talking about some rain. Not a whole lot of chances for severe weather with this storm, just not a whole lot of moisture or instability. So we're mainly talking about a rainmaker coming in all the way through the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, also a little bit down there in the Southeast. And then eventually we're going to see that low pressure quickly scoot out of the country. Maybe having some small amounts to maybe a little bit more measurable amounts of lake effect snow after that, but it shouldn't be too impactful. I will say though, right here, this little lake effect band, if it does end up happening, this is really far out, so there's no guarantees this low pressure system kind of moves around at all, bringing a little bit warmer air up here. We're probably going to see predominantly just rain. But you can see there's kind of a consistent band here of some snow over here north of Syracuse and Utica. Just more in the higher elevations. You can see near in the lower elevations, it's mainly just rain there near the coast of the Great Lakes. But if this really does happen, we might have to watch out for a decent amount of snow up there. And you can see something's coming in from the south. What the heck is that? Well, that's our next storm after this. And this is going to be our, kind of pre-Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving snowstorm here that everybody's been talking about. And I do think that there is a little bit of confidence forming for this storm. You can see that snow line is a little bit further north than what some of the models indicated a couple of days ago, but there is some snow up there and it's trying to form. But, again, coming over to our temperatures, you can see our coldest air is back locked up in here. Where the snow is happening is with 30 to 34 degree temperatures near the surface. So it's going to be hard for that to stick. which will most likely lower the snowfall amounts for most people in comparison to if the ground was a little bit colder. We come up just above the surface, though, you can see we have plenty of cooler air. So, I do think some snow could survive all the way down to the surface for sure with this storm, but it's going to be a close call. Whenever we see, rain like this and then really close to the snow, and it's just not a really organized system, we see these models kind of flip-flop all the way into the event. So a lot of low certainty, I would say, in terms of what this is going to end up doing in the future. Again, we're pretty far out here. Today is the 23rd, so we're about 5 days out from this. We still need about 2 more days before we can really start to lock in a snow forecast and snow amounts. So we're really just still speculating now, but again, it's really going to rely on where this freezing line sets up. It's a little bit further to the north, areas like Springfield, Indianapolis, and Columbus are going to get rain. If it's a little bit further to the south, though, areas like Louisville, Maysville, and Cincinnati, and St. Louis potentially could get some snow. As this pushes off to the east, you can see that it kind of, all this rain and snow kind of stays on this same line, going all the way into the northeast. Draw this line here, and you can just see it kind of track right there with it. So wherever this line sets up is going to be really important, with the exception of some mountain snow over here in West Virginia, going down into Kentucky and Virginia. As we go into the 28th at around 6 p.m., we still have this storm ongoing, bringing some snow, potentially pretty close to the coast here. I will tell you, not super confident about this. This is one of the areas where we always have the least confidence when it comes to the snowstorms. And why that is because of this right here. As you can see, we have some pretty anomalously warm ocean temperatures just off of the coast here of New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And any storm that kind of comes in this area is going to be tapping into those warmer waters. And the models, especially farther out, just really don't have a good capability of factoring in these warm waters too well. So that's one thing we're going to have to watch out for, is kind of some last minute changes on the models on whether or not this is possible. But it definitely is something to watch out for. I wouldn't get excited just yet by any means. We're still pretty far out. Again, we're right on the 29th at 3 a.m. So now we're getting in that 6-day range. And for snow, well, that's pretty much fantasy land. So we'll keep on giving you guys updates on what's going to be possible here until we get closer to the event and form a little bit more confidence. But pushing this out just a little bit further into the future, you can see that if we get a low pressure system kind of move some colder air over the Great Lakes, which does seem to be the case. In fact, some pretty cold air could make it down into the United States. Again, this is by no means an Arctic air, although you could make the argument that there is some Arctic air potentially moving into parts of North Dakota and northern Minnesota. For the majority of the Ohio Valley and the Northeast, we're talking just your regular November cool down here. And that's going into the 30th. So we're pretty much at the end of where I think there's really anything to talk about in terms of confidence. We could go farther out and speculate on whether or not that colder air up there near North Dakota is eventually going to try to make it down across the United States, which you can see it does kind of try, but again, it's just too far out to really have any confidence. So I'm not going to really talk about that too much. Coming over here to the western United States, from looking at the models, you can see that we're going to continue to see some rain and snow up here in areas like California, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, going into Idaho and Montana, potentially another little bit of a low pressure system coming into Oregon and Washington and Northern California. That was not going to be nearly as impactful as the last one that we had, but definitely a decent amount of rain and snow coming back to the coastal regions of the West Coast. This is going to be on the 25th, so that's not too far away. Pushing this even further, you can see more snow is going to continue to pile up here on the Sierra Mountains, and then eventually is going to move over here into Nevada and Utah, potentially Colorado could get on some snow there as well. That's going to kind of hang out in this region for kind of a while and then eventually sink down to the south, trying to make it over there towards the Panhandle in Oklahoma. But I can't tell you how many times model have done this so far this year, and we've never really seen too much happen down there. So low confidence on that. But as you can see, after that, it gets pretty dry over here in the West Coast. Maybe a couple shots of rain over there. That's about it. In terms of temperatures, as you can see, we're going to be watching out for some cooler temperatures in the higher elevations. That's why there's going to be a lot of snow possible. But we are going to see a pretty big warm up over here in Texas and Oklahoma, where we're going to have 80-degree to 70-degree temperatures all the way up into that region when we go into the 24th during midday. Then eventually it's going to try to cool down again, especially over there in Oklahoma and Texas. So a pretty brief warm up there, maybe dropping down into the 40s and 50s again, getting pretty warm over there near Houston and Louisiana. This is going to be around the time where we're going to be watching out for some rain out in front of this little clipper system, about the 25th there. And that's going to push down to the south and east. And then overnight, it's going to actually get pretty cold over here in Oklahoma, getting into the 30s. Maybe those 30s can make it all the way into northern Texas, getting pretty close to Dallas. Might not quite make it though. This is the 26th at around 6 a.m. So your morning temperatures there. And the warmth continues to try to build back in, but it's kind of a battle in between the warmth and the cold until we get that system move in and bring a lot more cooler air back down into the United States, cooling down a lot of folks over there near Texas, also over here near New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, going into Nevada. Could see some single-digit temperatures out there, especially in the higher elevations. So just make sure you're preparing for that. Make sure you have the winter clothes ready to deal with those temperatures as they come through. Now, in terms of severe weather over here in parts of Texas, going into Louisiana and the rest of the southeast, what we're mainly going to be watching for is for enough instability to be present for these storms to become severe, bringing threats like damaging winds, hail, and maybe a tornado or two. Pushing this into the future, you can see that the instability doesn't really build in for that little clipper system, so we're not expecting too much, maybe a couple of thunderstorms over here along the coast, but nothing too crazy there. But then as that Thanksgiving storm starts to come in, it might be strong enough to pull up just enough moisture and instability here for parts of northern Louisiana, going down into Texas, also into Mississippi and northern Alabama, where we're going to be expecting the chance for some severe weather to form, but it's not looking like the biggest severe weather outbreak environment that we've had. I mean, it's looking kind of weak, to be honest. Going into the 28th at around 12 p.m., we are seeing that instability try to build back up north of New Orleans, all the way up into Atlanta and South Carolina. Potentially some thunderstorms also possible up there in North Carolina at this time. And then eventually that's going to push down to the south and east and kind of get out of our hair. And then our instability on any part of our country is pretty much at zero. So let's kind of look at our upper level and lower level winds to determine how much spin we're going to have, where that instability is. And there's a little bit there. It's not a whole lot. It's kind of on the weaker side, and a lot of these wind barbs in these areas are going to be moving parallel to each other, which really isn't that favorable for spin in the atmosphere, but they might be a little bit of spin, especially if we can get some sort of shortwave kind of work its way into this area. But right now, I'm not overly concerned about the tornado threat. I do think there is the potential for one to exist, but the instability is kind of weak, and so is the wind shear, at least in the lower levels. Going into the upper level wind shears, kind of the same story here. Definitely on the weak side of things, maybe going into the 28th later, it gets a little bit stronger, allowing for, maybe a little bit more of an organized thunderstorm to severe weather threat going through Alabama, northern Georgia, into Tennessee, and then also going into areas like South Carolina and North Carolina before that pushes off of the coast here. A good way to visualize this storm, at least in my opinion, is to look at the future lightning that could be possible across the United States. And as you can see, as we go into early morning on the 28th, we do have a lot of little areas here where we could have some lightning, some thunderstorms, and maybe some severe weather over here near Mississippi, going into the Mississippi-Alabama border there. And that's eventually going to push down to the south and east, where we could have a little bit more of an organized cluster there with some more lightning. And then that's eventually going to continue to push across the southeast into South Carolina and North Carolina before it exits out of the country and it's out of our hair. Eventually, even some lightning strikes all the way up there to the north of South Virginia as well. But all right, everybody, that's going to be it for me. Again, thank you for tuning in to another forecast. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe and share this video if you did enjoy it. And I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.